Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below. Welcome to this regional news report. We're bringing you some key updates from across Iceland, Greenland, and Shetland today.
Yeah, we've gathered the main developments to give you a good overview of what's happening.
Great. So let's start with Iceland. What's the latest there?
Well, first up, there's an interesting draft report about whaling. It suggests that whaling licenses might actually be considered property under the Constitution.
Property. Okay, so what does that mean in practice? Compensation, maybe?
Exactly. That's the potential implication. If they were to bring in a permanent ban on whaling, the state might have to pay compensation.
Even though a 5-year license was issued last autumn, I heard the main company, HF, isn't actually planning to whale this year.
That's right. But this report, it highlights that any ban would need a really clear legal mandate from Alþingi, the parliament.
Based on solid reasons like animal welfare or maybe the country's image.
Precisely. And it refers back to a 2022 Supreme Court case about mackerel quotas.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Did it say something about occupational rights, maybe being property-like?
It did, yeah. But in that specific case, they decided compensation wasn't required because there were objective grounds for the new system.
So the takeaway here is that changes to things like fishing or whaling entitlements might be seen as property, but compensation isn't automatic.
That seems to be the angle the report is exploring, yes.
Okay, let's shift to the economy. The IMF has weighed in on Iceland.
Yes, they've presented their assessment. The main challenges they see are, well, probably no surprise, lowering inflation and getting public finances in better shape.
Right, and their recommendations.
They suggest gradually lowering interest rates. And they're actually predicting inflation will fall to 2.5% next year.
That sounds optimistic. What about growth?
They expect growth to pick up this year. And they think the direct impact from geopolitical trade tensions will be limited.
Because most exports go to Europe.
Mainly, yes. That's assuming the pharmaceutical sector, which is quite important, stays exempt from any U.S. tariffs.
But there are risks, I assume.
Oh, definitely. Slower global growth is one. Potential EU retaliatory tariffs could bite. Or even a drop in U.S. tourism.
And inflation could rise again if supply chains get hit or the krona weakens.
Exactly. Those are the main downside risks they flagged.
They also mentioned quite a slowdown in GDP growth, didn't they? From over 5% down to almost nothing.
Yeah, a big drop.
Yeah.
From 5.6% in 2023 to just 0.5% projected for 2024. Mainly because of lower fish catches and some energy constraints.
And high wage increases might slow down that inflation drop, too.
That's another factor, yes.
Yeah.
The IMF does support the government's plan for fiscal consolidation, getting the budget balanced.
Did they suggest specific measures?
They did. Things like raising the lower VAT rate, increasing capital gains tax, but only on second homes, that sort of thing, and keeping public investments steady relative to GDP.
Okay. Moving on from the economy, there's something about Eurovision.
Yes, quite a stir. 30 former Icelandic Eurovision participants have signed a petition.
30? Wow. What are they asking for?
They're urging the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, to exclude Israel from this year's contest because of the situation in Gaza.
And these are some well-known names.
Oh, yes. Members of Dario Ganyamani, Sister, Hatari, quite a few recognizable acts from past years.
And their argument is?
They're accusing the EBU of effectively whitewashing Israeli state actions by allowing them to participate. They point to Russia being excluded in 2022 as a precedent.
Interesting. What's the government's stance?
Well, Iceland's Minister for Foreign Affairs actually opposes Israel's participation too, but says, the final decision is up to the EBU.
Right, it's the EBU's call. Okay, let's turn to a more serious domestic issue, an assault case in Vopnafjörður.
Yes, the main court hearing has started. The defendant is charged with attempting to murder his former partner.
And there were prior concerns. I heard the victim had requested a restraining order.
Reports suggest that request was denied shortly before the attack allegedly happened, which is obviously very concerning.
What's the defendant's position?
He's claiming the attack happened during a psychotic episode. He denies breaking and entering and sexual assault charges, though.
But he admits he was in a bad state.
Yes, he mentioned being affected by media coverage of child abuse, which seems to relate to a past trauma and also the end of his relationship.
What does he say happened during the incident itself?
He alleges the victim was throwing out his tools and threatened to stop him seeing their son. He says this triggered a rage.
And his memory?
He claims he only remembers fragments, including being on top of her with an iron rod. So the court needs to determine his intent and whether this claim of psychosis and memory loss holds up.
A very difficult case. Okay, one last item from Iceland. Nursing home waiting lists.
Yeah, they're reportedly quite long. And the root cause seems to be an unresolved dispute between the state and municipalities over who pays for what.
Ah, a cost-sharing issue.
Exactly. Reykjavik City's welfare director says they're ready to improve housing, especially for people with disabilities, but they can't move forward without this agreement.
How long are the waits?
The average is apparently over 3 years. There are 170 people on the list right now, mostly people with intellectual disabilities.
Is there any proposed solution on the table?
There's a state working group proposal. It suggests the state covers the more extensive, specialized services, while municipalities handle the general social support for disabled individuals.
And is there a specific group facing challenges?
Yes, younger nursing patients who need integrated social and health care. There's a lack of suitable places for them. Ideas include dedicated units or maybe separate wards.
Okay, lots going on in Iceland. Let's move over to Greenland now. What's the news there?
Well, starting with an issue that bridges Greenland and Denmark, a demonstration in Copenhagen.
What was that about?
It was against a new Danish law concerning the placement of Greenlandic children in Denmark. Demonstrators feel it doesn't do enough about past cases, what they see as forced adoptions.
This is a really sensitive area, isn't it? There was that report showing Greenlandic kids are placed outside the home much more often.
5 times more likely, according to that 2022 report, yes. And criticism has focused on Danish caseworkers maybe not having enough cultural understanding, and also potentially biased parental competency tests being used.
Did the Danish government respond to that?
They did allocate funds in 2023 for new tests and guidelines. And this new law, from May 1st, actually stops the use of those specific older tests on Greenlandic families.
Okay, so that's a change.
Yes, and it mandates a special unit with Greenlandic expertise to review about 460 ongoing cases where those tests were used.
But the demonstrators feel that's not enough.
Right. They argue the past cases, the ones they believe were forced adoptions, should also be reviewed. It's about the children's right to be with their parents if they were wrongly removed.
A complex and painful history there. Okay, what else from Greenland? Something about the U.S.?
Yes, reports from the Wall Street Journal suggesting the U.S. is stepping up its intelligence efforts in Greenland.
This comes after previous U.S. interest in, well, acquiring the island.
Exactly. The reports claim this increased espionage is about gathering info on the independence movement and how locals feel about potential U.S. resource extraction.
Are there specifics? Like identifying people?
Allegedly, yes. Identifying individuals in both Greenland and Denmark who might support U.S. goals for Greenland.
Has the U.S. commented?
A National Security Council spokesperson declined to comment on intelligence specifics, but did mention U.S. concerns about security in Greenland and the Arctic generally.
And Denmark's reaction?
Their foreign minister plans to summon the U.S. ambassador. He wants clarification and expressed concern, saying quite firmly, "We do not spy on friends."
Yeah, especially given past comments from a former U.S. president and the existing defense agreement giving the U.S. significant access. It's sensitive timing.
Very much so. Okay, turning to domestic issues. A workforce shortage.
Yes, businesses in Greenland are apparently struggling to find enough local workers.
The head of Greenland business, who's in the restaurant and hotel sector herself, says her places rely on foreign workers because locals just aren't applying in sufficient numbers.
Is there a perception they prefer foreign workers?
She says that narrative exists, but she pushes back strongly, says it's simply about who applies and is willing to do the work.
And she sees untapped potential locally.
Yes, points to unemployed or uneducated young people and calls for more effort to get them into jobs. But it's not just willingness, it's also skills.
Like trained staff.
Exactly. Trained waiters, chefs, a shortage there too. So they've hired foreign staff for years, considers them key people now. She's advocating for more education and training for Greenlanders.
Makes sense. Okay, a quick note on some other items, drug offenses involving Danes.
Yes, KNR mentioned a case with 5 Danish citizens, but not many details were available in the sources we saw.
And a prominent business figure in court, Ben Friesaling.
Right, co-owner of Polar Seafood. He was charged with attempted assault from an incident back in December 2021.
What happened?
Allegedly poked a man in the eye during a row at a bar in Nuuk. He claimed self-defense in court, said hitting the eye was an accident while gesturing.
And the outcome?
He pleaded guilty. The prosecutor wanted 60 days jail, but the court just issued a warning.
A warning? Why?
They cited the relatively minor nature of it and how long ago it happened. KNR justified naming him because of his public profile.
Right. Sadly, there's also news of a homicide investigation.
Yes, Greenland police are investigating a homicide. The location wasn't specified in the report.
And generally, a busy time for the police.
Seems so. Lots of incidents reported across the country in the last day or so. Violence, theft, disorder, domestic issues, even reports of rape in Nuuk and Inuiatit.
Any arrests in the rape cases?
Not mentioned in the reports we saw. Investigations are ongoing. Police did note the overall volume of incidents isn't necessarily unusual, though.
Okay. And specifically in Tassilak, there's been vandalism.
Yeah, quite widespread, apparently. Smashed windows, offices ransacked, even an inflatable boat punctured.
Do they know who did it?
Police have suspects, but haven't released more details. Locals are frustrated, saying it's becoming a bigger problem, affecting businesses, schools, homes. One resident called for politicians and citizens to work together on it.
A worrying trend. Shifting to public health and HIV warning.
Yes, the chief medical officer is concerned about a potential rise in HIV transmission.
What are the numbers like?
Historically, over 200 cases. 5 new ones last year. The worry is that there's still a high level of other STIs, especially among young people, and that increases the HIV risk.
So the message is about protection.
Absolutely. Use condoms. They're free through the healthcare system. Also, free HIV testing is available for anyone who wants it.
And finally, for Greenland, food shortages up north.
In Upernavik.
Yes, residents reporting empty shelves, things like cheese, eggs, basic foods. Shortages started back in February, apparently.
Is this a common winter problem?
Supply issues are common when ice stops the ships, yes. They use Air Greenland then, but bad weather caused delays this year. Plus, air freight is expensive.
And even when goods arrive. Reports say they get bought up really quickly, often in bulk, by just a few people, leaving others without, especially fresh vegetables.
What's the official line?
The local K&I director acknowledges the problems, but says finding a cost-effective long-term fix for these isolated places is really hard. Importing from the U.S. is apparently too expensive compared to European suppliers.
A tough situation. All right, one last political point from Greenland. Reactions to the Premier's Denmark visit.
Yes, his statements about potentially renegotiating the Self-Government Act caused a bit of a stir back home.
He emphasized closer cooperation with Denmark.
He did. But a former premier criticized doing any renegotiation behind closed doors wants public discussion. Another politician questioned the coalition's unity on it.
How did the current premier respond?
He clarified he didn't actually negotiate the act on the trip, just presented the coalition's position, which includes working towards independence. He framed cooperation with Denmark and NATO as necessary for security right now, not contradicting the independence goal.
Okay, understood. Let's wrap up with Shetland. What's the news from there?
Some good news first. The Viking longship, Dim Riv, is back in the water after refurbishment.
Oh, brilliant. How was that funded?
A crowdfunding appeal and a timber donation did the trick. It'll be part of the VE Day 80th anniversary events and resume its summer trips.
Nice to hear. On a more serious note, a man jailed for abuse and theft.
Yes, a 44-year-old man got 31 months. He admitted to several charges: breaking in and stealing, breaching bail by contacting the victim, another break-in where he damaged things and assaulted a passerby.
Was there a restraining order?
A 10-year non-harassment order was issued as part of the sentence. The court noted his record and alcohol issues. Apparently, he has no connection to Shetland and expressed remorse.
Okay. Also, disruption from a cyber attack affecting the co-op.
That's right. It hit their card payment systems nationwide. The Lurvik store issue was fixed quickly, but nationally some stores couldn't take cards and there were stock issues too.
Was any data compromised?
The co-op CEO said a limited amount of member data was accessed. They have apologized for it all.
Right, and some ferry disruptions coming up.
Just temporary ones due to maintenance affecting the Walsay and Bressay services.
Yeah.
Some cancellations on the Bressay route Sunday, and Walsay sailings diverted to Vidlin on one date for linkspan work.
Good for travelers to know. Now, a story about community support after a house fire.
Yes, really heartwarming. A family lost their home and pets, tragically. But a crowdfunder raised a lot of money for them.
That's fantastic.
They're incredibly grateful for all the support: money, clothes, belongings. They praised the community's strength and compassion. They've been rehoused by the council, too, who they said acted really quickly, along with the fire service.
It's great to hear about communities pulling together like that. Okay, one final point, linking Shetland and the wider region. Emission controls for ships.
Yes, the Faroe Islands have agreed to back a proposal for a new Emission Control Area, an ECA, in the Northeast Atlantic.
And this would cover waters around Shetland, too.
Yes. Faroes, Iceland, Greenland, UK, Ireland, France, Portugal, Spain. The idea is to limit air pollution from ships, specifically sulfur and nitrogen oxides.
So stricter rules.
Much stricter. It's expected to reduce pollution, improve health, and protect the marine environment, especially up in the Arctic.
How will ships comply?
Apparently, most Faroe ships already meet the new sulfur limits. Others using heavy fuel oil can switch to cleaner fuel or install exhaust cleaning systems, often called scrubbers.
Okay. Interesting development for the maritime sector there.
Definitely one to watch.
Right. That brings us to the end of this regional news report. We've covered quite a bit from Iceland, Greenland, and Shetland today. Like and subscribe to PALS Fundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.